Hi there guys, I'm Nikhil from GreedyTech, and in this video, I'll be doing the complete camera review of the Vivo V20. On the rear, this phone has a triple camera setup with a 64 megapixel primary camera with f1.89 aperture, an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, which is also used for taking macro shots and for taking portrait shots, and finally a 2 megapixel dedicated mono sensor camera. For selfies, it has a 44 megapixel camera with f2.0 aperture with the new autofocus technology. Now here's the camera interface. Let me just show you how to enable eye autofocus. For that, go to settings, then select motion autofocus and make sure selected to auto, left eye or right eye. By default, this particular feature is disabled, but turn it on and set it to auto and you can turn on eye autofocus. Now here's a quick preview. Now the front camera is trying to detect my eyes and it's trying to focus. Let me just show you that again. So it also works with video recording as well. So that's the animation, and that's where this phone is doing its magic. So first we'll start off with the selfies. By default, eye autofocus is not turned on, but you can always enable it from settings. And right out of the box, selfies from this specific phone don't usually look like other Vivo phones, where colors are usually popped out and there's a lot of processing. As you can see, colors look pretty natural, close to reality. Skin tones look pretty good. Yes, there is a bit of processing, but it's not too much. It's acceptable. As for the dynamic range, it's good, but images are slightly overexposed, making selfies look a bit faded, but still look pretty good and pretty close to reality. Now here's a quick comparison between regular selfies and selfies taken with eye autofocus. Right out of the bat, you might not notice a huge difference. They might look pretty similar, but with eye autofocus turned on, you can get better selfies, which are actually well focused. Now these are the portrait selfies. Unlike your regular selfies, which slightly look faded, portrait selfies kinda look saturated and colors pop out a bit. As this phone uses just a single camera for taking portrait shots, edge detection isn't perfect, but overall shot still looks pretty good. Now these are some selfies taken in low lighting conditions. First we have a regular selfie that's taken in the auto mode, and that's followed by a selfie taken with the night mode. Even in low lighting conditions, it's doing a pretty great job, and that night mode definitely works. Selfies taken in auto mode are slightly sharper, but selfies taken with the night mode are much more brighter. So there's no perfect choice and you can pick the best one based on your preference. Now here's a quick sample from the front camera at 4K resolution. Yes, this phone can record video in 4K resolution using the front facing camera, and that too with electronic image stabilization. And the stabilization itself also looks pretty decent. This phone also has a feature called steady phase, which super stabilizes the footage. And here's a sample shot. So guys, here's a quick preview recorded using the front-facing camera in indoor lighting conditions, and as you can see, footage is pretty stable and color reproduction is also pretty good. And now I'm going to switch to the stable mode. Now this video is being recorded using the steady phase. It's just like a cropped version of the earlier video, but it's much more stable. And as far as the quality goes, everything is pretty much similar. By the way, audio so far has been from the phone itself, I mean by the mic. And there's no gimbal as well. Stabilization once again is from the phone, and so far electronic image stabilization seems to be pretty good. So focusing is pretty good. So this is how the footage looks in indoor lighting conditions. Now besides all that, we also have two new features called picture in picture mode and dual video. And here's a quick look at the picture in picture mode. You can use two cameras at the same time, and you can switch the cameras between the primary focus and the secondary focus. Unlike the regular videos, when you're using two cameras, stabilization does suffer a bit. Now here's a quick sample for the dual video mode. Once again, footage looks pretty decent, a nice feature, but stabilization slightly suffers. Finally, we also have slow motion for selfies, and here's a quick sample. Well, there's not too much to talk about that. Now coming back to the rear camera, these are some sample shots taken with the primary 64 megapixel camera. By default, it takes pictures in 16 megapixel resolution because of pixel binning. And unlike the front camera, pictures from rear camera actually look slightly saturated, colors look much more punchy, and dynamic range is also pretty good. Now these are some shots taken with the wide angle camera, and it's definitely pretty wide. And once you switch between the primary camera and the wide angle camera, there is a subtle difference between exposure levels. But that's a problem we can see in most phones. Besides that, wide angle shots do look pretty good. Now these are some macro shots. this phone uses the same wide angle camera for taking macro shots as well, and they do turn out pretty good. Now these are some portrait shots. Once again, just like with portrait selfies, colors are much more saturated and much more punchy. As for edge detection, once again it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. This phone also has a dedicated high resolution mode, which simply takes pictures in 64 megapixel resolution. So if you want to take a bigger picture with more resolution, more details, you can give this a try. And these are some sample shots. Now these are some pictures taken in low lighting conditions with both the primary camera and the wide angle lens. And compared to other phones, this phone definitely takes pretty good pictures even in the auto mode. There is a lot of noise creeping in the dark areas, but still you do get comparatively decent colors and decent sharpness. Now here's a quick comparison between regular pictures taken in low lighting conditions along with pictures taken in the night mode. Obviously pictures taken in the light mode look much more brighter and has comparatively less noise, and that specifically applies to the primary camera. Now this phone also has 4 different filters for the night mode, and they start off with black and gold, blue ice, green orange and cyberpunk. And here's a quick comparison between all the filters with a regular night mode shot. Personally, I like the black and gold filter and the cyberpunk as well, depending on the conditions. Now here's the footage from the rear camera recorded at 1080p resolution with the primary camera. Stabilization is pretty good, colors look pretty decent, and even the dynamic range is pretty good, but there is a bit of focus hunting. I think it can be fixed with a future update. Now this is a video recorded with the wide angle camera. Once again, stabilization looks pretty good and the footage is much more wider than the primary camera, but once again there is a bit of focus hunting. Now here's a sample footage recorded using the ultra stable mode, which can further stabilize the footage. Now here's a sample footage recorded in 4K resolution but downscaled to 1080p. Once again, electronic image stabilization works pretty well, colors look pretty accurate, close to reality, but once again there is a bit of focus hunting. So guys, to conclude, cameras on this phone are pretty good, especially its front camera with its 4K recording capabilities. So if you are a content creator, if you record a lot of videos, especially with the front facing camera, then this is definitely one of the best phones that you can get in this price segment. So guys, that's pretty much it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you're planning to buy this phone, use the link in the description. It always helps the channel. I'm Nikhil from GreedyTech signing off. Have a nice day.